This story is titled, I flew home to visit my parents, but they wouldn't open the door because they only wanted my money, so I just went back home and stopped sending them cash. Within a month, they were at my doorstep begging for forgiveness. Subreddit. My name is Marcus, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a warehouse operations manager for a logistics company about 3 hours away from my hometown. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but it pays decent money, especially with overtime. I've managed to get my own apartment, maintain a reliable car, and even build up some savings. Nothing fancy, but I'm doing all right for myself and feel pretty good about where I am in life. My family, however, is a completely different story. There's my mom, Patricia, who's 50 years old and hasn't worked a real job since my dad died 4 years ago. She gets some Social Security benefits, but she spends most of her time on Facebook, complaining about everything constantly. Then there's my sister, Brooke, who's 24 and works part-time at a nail salon. When she feels like showing up, that is. Most of the time, she lives off whatever boyfriend she's with at the moment, or she hits up family members for emergency money when things get tight. My brother Kevin is 22 and bounces between construction jobs and unemployment. He always has some excuse for why he can't keep work. The boss was unfair, the conditions were too hard, the pay wasn't worth it. There's always something preventing him from maintaining steady employment, and honestly, I'd stopped believing his excuses a long time ago. Here's where the whole situation gets incredibly stupid. About 2.5 years ago, my mom called me crying. She said she couldn't make ends meet anymore because Dad's life insurance money had finally run out. The house needed repairs and she was scared they'd lose everything. Being the oldest child and the only one with a steady income, I stepped up like an absolute idiot. I agreed to set up a joint checking account so I could help with bills when things got tight. Nothing crazy, I thought. Just utilities and groceries during rough patches. That decision turned out to be my first major mistake. You see, when I agreed to help with bills, I thought that meant exactly what it sounded like. Maybe $200 to $300 a month maximum during particularly difficult times. What I didn't realize was that I'd just essentially become their personal bank account, available for whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. Within 6 months, the situation had spiraled completely out of control. Brooke had somehow gotten a debit card for the joint account I'd set up. I still don't know how that happened. I certainly didn't authorize it. Then Kevin convinced my mom to add him as an authorized user on my credit card, supposedly for emergencies only. Of course, that's what they said. Emergencies only. The spending started immediately, but I didn't notice it at first because I was working absolutely crazy hours, pulling double shifts constantly. I was trying to save up for a house down payment, so I was focused on maximizing my income and putting in as much overtime as possible. When I'd check my account and see money going out, I just assumed it was the stuff we'd agreed on. My mom told me she was managing the household expenses, so I trusted her completely. That turned out to be my second big mistake. The real wake-up call should have been last Christmas when I drove down with presents for everyone. I'd spent about $400 total on gifts, which was a lot for me at the time, but I wanted to do something nice for the family. When I got there, I immediately felt this weird energy in the house. They were all acting guilty, like they'd been talking about me before I arrived and got caught. The whole dinner was awkward as hell, with this tension I couldn't quite put my finger on. Brooke kept making these little passive-aggressive comments about how I act like I'm better than everyone just because I have a salary job. Kevin made some crack about how I must be rolling in money since I live alone and don't have to support anyone else. Meanwhile, my mom just sat there letting it all happen without saying a word. When I tried to bring up family memories or ask about what was going on in their lives, they'd give me one-word answers and immediately change the subject. But the moment someone needed something, whether it was Brooke's car payment or Kevin's phone bill, suddenly, I was family again. The attitude would completely shift, and they'd be sweet and loving until they got what they wanted. I ended up leaving early that night, telling them I had to work the next day, which was actually true. Brooke rolled her eyes and said something like, "Of course you do," under her breath. That should have been my sign to cut them off right there. But you know how it is with family. You keep trying because they're blood, and you convince yourself that things will get better. This year, I decided to give it one more shot. Maybe things would be different, I thought. Maybe they'd grown up a little and we could actually have a normal family Christmas for once. I took 3 days off work, which wasn't easy given how busy we were during the holiday season. I spent $350 on a flight during peak travel time when prices were absolutely insane. I even sent them my travel plans 3 weeks ahead of time to make sure everyone knew I was coming. I got radio silence in response, but that was pretty normal for them. They're terrible at communication unless they want something from you. So I figured no news was good news and proceeded with my plans. When I finally arrived at the house, I had a $40 pie from this fancy bakery near the airport. I was genuinely thinking that maybe I could smooth things over and we could have a nice family Christmas for once. I was standing on the porch in my good jacket, holding this expensive pie, actually excited to see everyone after months of barely talking. Before I could even knock on the door, it opened. My mom was standing there wearing a sweater that I had bought her 2 birthdays ago. I remember it specifically because it cost me $70 at Kohl's, and she made such a big deal about how thoughtful and generous I was. But now she was looking at me like I was some door-to-door salesman trying to sell her a vacuum cleaner. "You weren't invited," she said flatly. "This is for family only." I swear time stopped completely. I could hear voices and laughter coming from inside the house. I could smell the food, expensive food, the kind of elaborate spread that costs serious money. And here she was telling me I wasn't welcome at my own family's Christmas dinner. I didn't argue with her. I didn't ask questions or try to understand what was happening. I just turned around and walked back to my rental car like a zombie. The whole time I was thinking this had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe she was having a senior moment and forgot I was coming. Maybe there was some confusion about the dates. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. "Don't take it personally. You know how you are." That's when reality hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a mistake or confusion. They had planned a family Christmas dinner and deliberately excluded me. After 2.5 years of me financially supporting them, they had decided I wasn't family enough to join them for the holidays. I sat in that rental car for about 10 minutes, just staring at the house. I could see people moving around inside, shadows passing by the windows. My family was having Christmas dinner without me, and I was sitting outside like some kind of stranger. That's when I stopped being sad and started getting genuinely pissed off. I drove to a Burger King about 20 minutes away and parked in their lot. I ordered a combo meal that I didn't even want, just so I'd have somewhere to sit and think without feeling like a complete loser. That's when I decided to start really looking at my bank account for the first time in months. See, I'd been working so much overtime lately that I hadn't been paying close attention to my finances. I knew money was going out to help the family, but I figured it was just the usual stuff we'd agreed on. Utilities, groceries, maybe some emergency car repairs when things came up. I was so incredibly wrong. I started scrolling through my checking account transactions on my phone, and immediately I saw charges I didn't recognize. There were multiple Amazon orders every single week, DoorDash deliveries happening almost daily, subscription charges for Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, and HBO Max, streaming services that I don't even use myself. There was a gym membership for Planet Fitness in my hometown, which made no sense since I live 3 hours away and work out at home. But it got so much worse as I kept digging. I found charges at Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works. There were purchases from some boutique clothing store called Vintage Vibes. Gaming purchases on Xbox Live were showing up regularly. Uber rides all over town were happening constantly. This wasn't emergency money for basic necessities. This was a whole lifestyle that I was funding without even knowing it existed. I called my bank right there in the Burger King parking lot and asked them to email me complete statements for the joint account going back 2 years. The customer service lady was super helpful and said they'd send everything within the hour. While I waited, I started recording voice memos on my phone, just talking through what I was discovering. Sometimes you need to say stuff out loud to make yourself believe it's actually real. "Okay, so there's an $89 charge at some restaurant called Bella Vista last Tuesday," I said into my phone. "Last Tuesday I was working a double shift and wasn't even in town. So who the hell is eating $89 dinners with my money?" The bank statements showed up in my email before I even finished my fries. Holy shit, guys. I'm talking about 47 pages of transactions covering 2 years of financial history that I apparently had no idea about. I started categorizing everything in my head. Bills I'd actually agreed to help with, emergencies they'd specifically asked me about, and random shit they just bought without asking permission. The ratio was absolutely insane. For every dollar I'd knowingly agreed to help with, there were 5 more dollars I'd never heard about. But here's the part that really got to me. I found a $127 charge at a liquor store on December 15th. My mom doesn't drink alcohol. She hasn't touched a drop since my dad died 4 years ago. So either she'd developed a secret drinking problem that nobody knew about, or they were buying expensive booze for their Christmas party. The Christmas party that I wasn't invited to. I kept digging through the statements and found more party-related expenses that made my blood boil. There was a $43 charge at Party City for decorations, a $78 purchase at some fancy grocery store for holiday catering items, Then I found a $156 charge at a place called Gourmet Express for what looked like appetizer platters and fancy hors d'oeuvres. They had literally used my money to throw themselves a Christmas party, and then told me I wasn't welcome to attend. I made another voice memo right there in the parking lot. I think I've been funding my own exclusion from the family. That's actually impressive in how fucked up it is. I ended up spending the next 2 days holed up in my hotel room. Yeah, I stayed in town just to process this complete mess because I needed time to wrap my head around what I'd discovered. I went through every single statement with a fine-tooth comb and made spreadsheets because apparently I'm that kind of person now. But honestly, I needed to see it all laid out systematically to believe how bad the situation really was. The final tally was absolutely staggering: $11,847 over 28 months. And that's not counting the agreed-upon bills that I'd actually authorized. That was just unauthorized stuff. Money they spent without asking on things they never told me about. Brooke alone had racked up $4,200 in charges for clothes, makeup, restaurant meals, and Uber rides to God knows where. Her nail salon job pays maybe $800 a month when she bothers to show up, but she was living like she made $50,000 a year. Kevin was even worse with $4,600 in charges, mostly gaming stuff and fast food delivery. This guy was buying $60 video games while claiming he couldn't afford his car payment. He'd purchased a $300 gaming headset the same week he asked me for grocery money because he was supposedly broke. But my mom was the real winner in this whole scam. She had racked up $2,900 in random purchases, including $400 at some home decor store for God knows what kind of decorative nonsense. There were multiple charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, apparently because being a grieving widow includes a lot of expensive lunches and decorative throw pillows. The remaining $140 was mystery charges that I couldn't even figure out what they were for. Here's what really pissed me off, though. I cross-referenced all the dates with our text conversations, and I discovered a pattern that made me sick to my stomach. Every single time they'd ask me for help with something specific, they'd spend double that amount on random crap the same exact week. It was like they were using my guilt and concern as a way to fund their shopping sprees. Like when Brooke texted me in October saying, "Hey, can you help with my rent? I'm $250 short and I'm freaking out." I sent the money immediately because I'm not a monster and didn't want my sister to be homeless. But that same day, she spent $180 at Sephora and $95 on dinner at some trendy place downtown. She wasn't struggling to pay rent. She was struggling to pay rent while maintaining her expensive lifestyle. Or when Kevin called me in September, claiming his car was making weird noises and he needed $300 for repairs. I sent the money because I didn't want him stranded without transportation for work. Turns out he spent $350 on a new TV that same week. They weren't just taking my money, they were actively lying to get it, then spending it on luxury shit while making me feel guilty for not helping them more. I called my bank again and asked about getting fraud protection on all my accounts. The representative asked if I wanted to file a police report for unauthorized usage, and I said not yet, but I wanted to know my options. Then I called a lawyer, found this guy online who specialized in financial fraud and family law. I told him the whole story over the phone, and he said something that really stuck with me. Sometimes family hurts you worse than strangers because they know exactly how to manipulate your love for them. Damn, that hit different. He also explained that if I could prove the charges were unauthorized, which I could, since I had all our text conversations saved, I could potentially pursue criminal charges for financial fraud, even against family members. I wasn't ready to go that far yet, but it was good to know I had options if things escalated. I flew home the day after Christmas and spent the entire weekend planning my next move. This wasn't about revenge exactly, but about consequences. There's a difference, right? I work in logistics, so I know how to plan things systematically. You identify the problem, gather your data, develop a solution, execute the plan, and monitor the results. It's basic process management. The problem was clear. My family had been stealing from me for over 2 years while treating me like an outsider. The data was overwhelming. $11,847 in unauthorized charges, documented lies, and a clear pattern of manipulation. The solution was equally straightforward: cut off all financial access immediately and permanently. I started by calling every company that had autopay set up from my accounts. Utility companies, credit card payments, insurance. Everything got canceled, effective immediately. Then I called my bank and had them freeze the joint account pending a fraud investigation. I told them that multiple people had been making unauthorized charges and I needed all activity stopped while I sorted everything out. Next, I contacted all 3 credit card companies and had them cancel any cards with additional authorized users. Kevin and Brooke's cards were dead. Mom's backup card for emergencies was gone. The whole process took about 4 hours spread across Monday and Tuesday. 4 hours to undo nearly 3 years of financial abuse. I didn't tell them what I was doing. I figured they'd find out soon enough, and boy, did they ever. Wednesday around 2 p.m., my phone started ringing non-stop. Brooke called first. "Hey, my card got declined at Target. Something's wrong with the system." I let it go to voicemail. Kevin called an hour later. "Dude, the bank said there's a problem with the account. Can you call them?" Also went to voicemail. Then my mom called. "Honey, I think someone hacked our bank account. None of the cards are working." That one went to voicemail too. By 6 p.m., I had 15 missed calls, and the family group chat was going absolutely insane. Brooke was texting, "Is anyone else's cards not working? This is so weird." Kevin chimed in, "Something's definitely wrong. None of my stuff is going through." Mom added, "I tried to pay for groceries and my card got declined. This is so embarrassing." My cousin Ryan, who lives out of state, asked, "Have you guys called the bank?" Brooke responded, "We've been trying, but they just say the account is frozen for security reasons." I watched it all unfold from my couch while eating Chinese takeout that I paid for with my own money, from my own account that nobody else had access to. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, and I wasn't even angry anymore. I was satisfied, finally, genuinely satisfied. Thursday morning brought genuine panic. I woke up to 31 missed calls and a voicemail box that was completely full. The family group chat had 127 unread messages from overnight. Apparently, the power had been shut off at my mom's house at 8 a.m. sharp. The automated payment that I'd been covering for 3 years didn't go through, and they'd been late enough times before that the utility company just cut them off without warning. Brooke was texting frantically, "I can't believe this is happening right before New Year's." Kevin added, "Mom's house is freezing. The heat's electric, so it's all off." Mom chimed in, "I don't understand what's happening. Why would they shut off the power?" My cousin Ryan asked the obvious question. "Wait, who's been paying the electric bill?" There was a long pause in the chat before Brooke responded. "That's not important right now. We need to figure out how to fix this." But Ryan wasn't letting it go. "No, seriously, whose name is the account under?" Another long pause. Kevin tried to deflect. "Look, can we just focus on getting the power back on?" Ryan pressed. "You guys don't even know who pays your bills, do you?" That's when I decided to have some fun. I posted in the chat for the first time since Christmas. "Power's off because the automatic payment from my account was canceled. Same with water, internet, and gas. They'll all be shut off within the next few days." The chat went dead silent for about 10 minutes. Then all hell broke loose. Brooke, "What do you mean your account? Why are you paying Mom's bills?" Kevin, "Dude, what's going on? Can you just fix this?" Mom, "Sweetie, please call me. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." Ryan, "Hold up. You've been paying all their utilities for how long?" I responded, 28 months, $480 per month on average, plus credit cards, groceries, and whatever else they felt like buying. Ryan replied, "Jesus Christ." Brooke shot back, "You don't have to make it sound like we're leeches or something." I asked, "What would you call it?" Kevin tried to justify it. "We're family. Family helps each other out." I replied, "Family also invites each other to Christmas dinner." Dead silence again. Ryan asked, "Wait, what happened at Christmas?" Nobody answered, so I did. I flew down for Christmas. Mom told me I wasn't invited because it was for family only. Found out later they used my credit card to pay for the dinner I wasn't allowed to attend. Ryan exploded. "Are you freaking kidding me?" My Aunt Susan, Ryan's mom, popped into the chat. "Patricia, is that true?" Mom tried to deflect. "There was a misunderstanding. We had limited space." Susan wasn't having it. "Limited space? It's your son. You used his money to pay for dinner he wasn't invited to?" Brooke attempted damage control. "It's more complicated than that," Susan asked. "How is it complicated? Either you invited him or you didn't." Kevin tried to minimize it. "Look, this is getting blown out of proportion." Ryan responded, "Is it though? Because it sounds like you guys have been using him as a personal ATM while treating him like shit." That's when I decided to drop the nuclear bomb. I posted the spreadsheet I'd been working on for days. I had organized every single transaction by person, date, and category, and it was beautiful in its brutal clarity. 28 months of data, $11,147 total in unauthorized charges, broken down by person with specific examples that painted a crystal clear picture of their behavior. Brooke's highlight reel included some real gems. $78 at Victoria's Secret on the same day she asked for rent help. $156 for dinner at Bella Vista for a party of 4. Who else was she feeding? $89 at Bath & Body Works for apparently emergency toiletries, and $67 in Uber rides in just 1 week for someone who doesn't even have a steady job. Kevin's greatest hits were equally impressive. A $298 gaming headset purchased the week after asking for grocery money, $45 DoorDash orders happening 2 to 3 times per week, $180 at Dick's Sporting Goods for someone who claimed to be completely broke, and $134 at GameStop in a single day across multiple transactions. Mom's special moments included $387 at HomeGoods because apparently the house needed redecorating, $156 at Olive Garden for a party of 6, another gathering I wasn't told about, $89 for wine purchases despite the fact that she doesn't drink, and $67 at Sally Beauty because apparently grief requires expensive hair products. I posted it all in the group chat with a simple message. Here's where your family help money actually went. Every charge is documented and verifiable. Then I left the group chat and blocked all their numbers. But I didn't block Ryan or Susan. I wanted to hear what happened next, and I knew they'd keep me updated. The next 3 weeks were absolutely wild, according to Ryan, who kept me informed through regular text updates about the complete meltdown happening in my hometown. Day 1. The power was still off, and my mom had to stay at Brooke's apartment. Brooke's landlord wasn't happy about the extra tenant violating the lease terms. Day 3. The water got shut off at Mom's house. Kevin had been crashing there to save money, so now he was effectively homeless too. Day 5. Mom's car got repossessed. Turns out I'd been making those payments as well, and she couldn't cover them on her own. Day 8 brought even more chaos. Brooke got evicted. Having Mom stay there had violated her lease, and when she couldn't pay the resulting late fees because her backup funding had disappeared, the landlord kicked both of them out. Day 12. Kevin got fired from his construction job for missing too many days. He'd been spending his time trying to fix the bank situation instead of actually working. Ryan was sending me updates like, "Dude, your mom is sleeping on Kevin's friend's couch. Brooke is staying with some guy she barely knows. This is absolutely insane." But here's the thing. I wasn't happy about their misery. I wasn't celebrating their downfall or feeling vindicated by their suffering. I was just completely neutral, like watching a house fire from across the street. It was sad that it was happening, but it wasn't my problem to solve anymore. Then, on day 18, Ryan forwarded me something that made my blood run completely cold. My mom had posted on Facebook, "Sometimes your own children abandon you when you need them most. Praying for strength during these difficult times. If anyone knows of affordable housing or can help with bills, please message me." The comments section was brutal, with family friends asking what had happened and offering help while wanting details. And my mom was playing the victim role perfectly. She kept responding with vague statements like, "going through a rough patch," "family drama," and trying to stay positive. There was absolutely no mention of the $11,847 she'd helped steal. No mention of the lies or the manipulation. No mention of Christmas dinner. That's when I realized they weren't learning anything from this experience. They weren't taking responsibility for their actions or reflecting on how their behavior had consequences. They were just trying to find new people to manipulate and take advantage of. So I decided to post my own Facebook status and tagged all of them in it. For anyone wondering about my family's rough patch, I wrote, I discovered they'd been using my credit cards and bank accounts without permission for over 2 years, spending nearly $12,000 on non-essential items while lying about needing help with basic bills. When I confronted them about it, they told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner that I unknowingly paid for. I've cut off all financial support and gone no contact. They're not homeless due to circumstances beyond their control. They're facing consequences for choices they made. I attached the spreadsheet showing all the unauthorized purchases. The fallout was immediate and absolutely spectacular. Family friends started commenting things like, "Holy shit, $12,000," and "Patricia, is this true?" And "How could you do this to your own son?" My mom tried to respond with, "This is a private family matter that's being blown out of proportion." But my Uncle Jim commented, "Patricia, I've seen the evidence. This isn't blown out of proportion at all." Ryan's mom, Susan, posted, I'm disgusted that my sister would treat her child this way. Within 6 hours, my mom had deleted her original post, but screenshots live forever. Several family members had already shared my response, and the truth was spreading like wildfire. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Please don't hang up," a voice said. It was Brooke calling from someone else's phone. "What do you want, Brooke?" I asked coldly. "We need to talk, all of us. Can you come down here? Or we can drive up there. There's nothing to talk about." "There is. We can fix this. We can pay you back." I actually laughed. "With what money? You don't have jobs." "We'll get jobs, real jobs. We'll make payments. At minimum wage working full-time, it would take you 3 years to pay back what you stole. That's assuming you didn't spend money on anything else. Don't call it stealing. What would you call it?" There was silence on the line, but then Brooke said something that made my blood freeze completely. "Look, we can discuss the house situation when you come down." "What house situation?" I asked, feeling my heart start to pound. Another long pause. Too long. "Brooke, what house situation?" "I thought you knew." "Knew what?" "About Dad's property, the land he left." My heart was racing now. "What land?" "Dad didn't own any land." "The 40 acres up north with the cabin." I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. "Dad had 40 acres? Mom didn't tell you?" "No, she freaking didn't tell me." "Brooke, I need you to explain right now what you're talking about." "The property Dad inherited from Grandpa Joe. It's been in the family for like 50 years. Mom's been handling all the paperwork since Dad died." I was quiet for so long that Brooke asked if I was still there. "When did you find out about this property?" I finally asked. "We've always known about it. I thought Mom said you knew." I had never heard about any property, not once in my entire life. Brooke went quiet again, and I could practically hear her realizing she'd fucked up massively. "Brooke, is Mom planning to sell this property?" "I can't. You need to talk to Mom about this." "Is she planning to sell it and split the money between you and Kevin?" "Please, just come down and we can all—" I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking as I called Ryan. "Ryan, did you know about some property Dad left? 40 acres up north?" "Oh shit, she didn't tell you." "Ryan, did you know?" "Yeah, man. I'm sorry, I thought you knew. It's been in the family forever. Your grandpa left it to your dad, and your dad left it to all 3 of you kids." "All 3 of us?" "Yeah, equal shares, 1/3 each." I felt sick to my stomach. "Ryan, what's the property worth?" "Dude, it's got road access, a decent cabin, and it's near the lake. In this market, probably $180,000, maybe more. $60,000. My share would be $60,000. "Ryan, has anyone mentioned selling it?" "Your mom's been asking family members about real estate agents. Said she wanted to liquidate Dad's assets to help with bills." "When?" "Started asking around in November." November. Right before they decided I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. "I need you to research a property in my father's name," I told my lawyer urgently. "And I need to know if there are any pending sales or transfers." 3 hours later, he called me back with information that made my stomach drop. "Your father left the property to all 3 children in equal shares. However, your mother filed paperwork in December claiming she has power of attorney over your share due to financial irresponsibility and family conflict." "Can she do that?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "Not legally, no, but if you weren't aware of the property and didn't contest it, she might have been able to push it through. The good news is nothing's been finalized yet." "What do I need to do?" "File a claim immediately. Contest the power of attorney and probably get a restraining order on any sale of the property." That's when I realized this wasn't just about the money I'd been sending them every month. This was about cutting me out of a $60,000 inheritance while using my own money to fund their lives until the sale went through. They weren't just thieves. They were sophisticated con artists running a long-term scam. I called Brooke back from my lawyer's office. "Hi," she said, sounding hopeful that I was reaching out. "Brooke, I just found out that Mom filed paperwork claiming power of attorney over my inheritance." Dead silence. "She told us you knew about the property and didn't want to deal with it." "That's a complete lie. She said you were too irresponsible with money to handle property ownership." The irony was absolutely incredible. "Brooke, I want you to think very carefully about your next words. Has Mom told you and Kevin that you'll each get half the property value when it sells? She said it would help all of us get back on our feet." "All of us? Or just you two?" There was a longer silence before she answered. "Just us two." There it was. They had been planning to steal my inheritance while using my own money to support themselves until the scam was complete. "Look," she continued, "we know we messed up, But you're destroying our lives over money. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not funding it anymore. And I'm certainly not letting you steal my inheritance. Mom's sleeping on a couch. Kevin's living in his car. And whose fault is that? You could fix this tomorrow if you wanted to. You could have prevented this entirely if you'd been honest with me about literally anything. More silence. Please, she said, and her voice cracked. We're family. Family doesn't lie to each other for 2 years. Family doesn't exclude each other from Christmas dinner. Family doesn't try to steal each other's inheritance while using their money to survive. We can change. You've had 28 months to change. Instead, you plan to steal from me. Please, I'm begging you. We'll do anything. And that's when I realized something important. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry they got caught. They weren't apologizing for lying to me, excluding me, or taking advantage of me. They were just scared because their long-term con was falling apart. Here's what's going to happen, I said, and my voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. You're going to get a lawyer and contest Mom's fraudulent power of attorney claim. You're going to tell the truth about how she lied to you about me knowing about the property. And you're going to make sure I get my full 1/3 share of that inheritance. I can't do that to Mom. Brooke, she was planning to steal $60,000 from me while using my money to keep you alive until the sale went through. She played all of us. But if we contest it, she'll get nothing. She was planning to give me nothing anyway. I could hear Brooke crying now. What if we split it 4 ways? Mom gets something too. Mom isn't entitled to that property. Dad left it to his children, not his wife. Please, she's our mother. And I'm your brother. Didn't stop you from planning to steal from me. There was a long pause. You're really going to destroy our family over this? Brooke, our family was destroyed the moment you decided I wasn't worth inviting to Christmas dinner while planning to steal my inheritance. I'm just making sure there are consequences. We'll fight this. Good luck. I have a lawyer, documented evidence of financial fraud, and the original will. You have a power of attorney document based on lies. I hung up and blocked that number too. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse and filed all the paperwork my lawyer had prepared. I contested the power of attorney, demanded an immediate freeze on any property transactions, and requested a full audit of how the property had been managed since Dad's death. Then I did something that felt absolutely nuclear. I posted an update to my Facebook status. Update. Discovered my family's financial fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. They've been planning to steal my inheritance worth $60,000 while using my money to support themselves until the scam was complete. My mother filed fraudulent power of attorney documents claiming I was financially irresponsible while I was paying all their bills. The same people who told me I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner were planning to steal my birthright. Legal action is being taken. I tagged all of them again, plus every family member I could think of. The response was immediate and absolutely brutal. Susan commented, "Patricia, how could you stoop this low?" Uncle Jim added, "This is beyond stealing. This is betrayal at the deepest level." Ryan posted, "Aunt Patricia, I can't believe you would do this to your own son." Even family friends started commenting, "This is disgusting," and "How do you sleep at night?" But the comment that hit hardest came from my dad's brother, Uncle Mark, who I hadn't heard from in years. "Your father would be ashamed. He left that land to all 3 of his children equally. The fact that you would try to steal from one of them while he was supporting you financially is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. I'm calling a family meeting." And he did exactly that. Uncle Mark, being the oldest male in the family after Dad died, had a certain authority that people respected. He organized a family gathering for the next weekend, extended family only. Mom, Brooke, and Kevin weren't invited. I drove down for it, marking the first time I'd been back to my hometown since Christmas. The meeting was held at Uncle Mark's house, and the turnout was impressive. Ryan was there, along with Susan and Uncle Jim. My cousin Rachel showed up, and even some great aunts I hadn't seen in years made the trip. Uncle Mark stood up and read my dad's will out loud, and the property section was crystal clear. I leave my inherited property at address to my 3 children Marcus, Brooke Marie, and Kevin James, in equal shares to be divided among them as they see fit. Not one word about Patricia. Uncle Mark emphasized this point. Not one word about power of attorney. Your father knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote this will. Then Susan spoke up. "I think we all need to understand what really happened here. Patricia has been taking advantage of Marcus's generosity for years while planning to steal his inheritance. This isn't a family dispute. This is criminal fraud." Uncle Jim nodded in agreement. "The boy's been supporting the whole family while they plan to rob him blind. That's when I found out the extent of their lies to the extended family. Apparently, my mom had been telling everyone for months that I was difficult to work with and refused to help with family matters. She'd been systematically setting up the narrative that I was the problem child who couldn't be trusted with financial decisions. Meanwhile, I was literally paying for their entire lifestyle without most of the family knowing about it. The worst part, said my great-aunt Helen, is that they excluded him from Christmas while planning this theft. That's not just stealing. That's pure cruelty. Uncle Mark looked directly at me and asked, "What do you want to do about this?" "I want my inheritance. I want them to pay back what they stole. And I want them to understand that actions have consequences." "What about criminal charges?" Ryan asked. I thought about it carefully. If they contest my inheritance claim or try to fight the audit, then yes. Criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Uncle Mark nodded approvingly. Fair enough. They made their choices. The family meeting ended with a unanimous decision. Mom, Brooke, and Kevin were officially cut off from all family support until they made things right with me. No one would lend them money, let them stay over, or help them in any way. It was the most validated I'd felt in years. 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I didn't recognize. "This is Attorney Williams representing Patricia, Mom's last name. We'd like to discuss a settlement regarding the property dispute." "What kind of settlement?" I asked. "My client is willing to split the property 3 ways as originally intended in exchange for you dropping any fraud charges." I laughed. "Your client doesn't get to negotiate terms for following the law. She's also prepared to begin repayment of the funds you claim were taken without authorization." "I don't claim anything. I have documented proof." Nevertheless, she'd like to avoid criminal prosecution. She should have thought about that before committing crimes. "What would it take for you to consider dropping this matter?" "Full repayment of $11,847 plus interest. My complete inheritance with no strings attached. And a written apology acknowledging that she lied about me to family for years." "That's quite demanding." "Those are the consequences of her choices." The lawyer called back the very next day. "My client accepts your terms." Just like that, they folded completely. No negotiation, no counteroffers, nothing. They simply caved under the pressure of facing real consequences for their actions. 2 weeks later, I had a cashier's check for $12,200 in my hands. They even paid interest on what they'd stolen. I also received legal ownership documents for my full 1/3 share of the property with no strings attached. And there was a 2-page handwritten letter from my mom admitting to everything and apologizing. The letter was absolutely pathetic. It was full of excuses about how desperate she was and how she never meant for things to go this far. There wasn't one word about how their actions had affected me emotionally or acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused. It was just self-pity and justifications from start to finish. I kept the check and property deed, but the letter went straight into the shredder. Her words meant nothing to me at that point. The next morning, Ryan texted me with an update. "Kevin showed up at my job yesterday asking if I could lend them money. Told him hell no. They're getting desperate." "Good," I replied. "Desperate people make changes." 3 months later, Ryan told me that Kevin had gotten a full-time job at a warehouse. Brooke was working at a restaurant, and my mom had applied for subsidized housing and was getting food stamps. They were finally functioning as adults. It only took cutting off their unlimited money supply to make it happen. I never responded to any more attempts at contact from them. I changed my phone number, blocked them on all social media platforms, and moved on with my life. It was honestly the best decision I ever made. The money I used to spend supporting their lifestyle went toward a down payment on my house where they'll never be welcome. Looking back on this whole experience, I've learned that some bridges are worth burning, especially when they were built on lies, manipulation, and betrayal. My family chose to treat me like an ATM while planning to steal my inheritance, and they chose to exclude me from their lives while taking advantage of my generosity. They made their choices, and I made mine. I'm not sad about losing them. I'm relieved. For the first time in years, I don't have to worry about surprise charges on my accounts. I don't have to wonder if my family actually cares about me or just sees me as a source of funding. I don't have to deal with the guilt trips, the manipulation, or the constant feeling that nothing I do is ever enough. I have my own life now, my own house, and my own financial security. And most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they happen to share your DNA.